In Tibetan Buddhism, when you have paintings of the wheel, you find not only is there often a Buddha at the center, but there is a Buddha in each domain. As it were, in the center of each domain, there is a Buddha appropriate to that part. And he represents the idea that you can be thoroughly involved in the wheel, and yet at the same time not involved. You can be in the world, but not of it. So, that would be saying, in order to escape from vicious circles, from the samsara, the best way out of it is right into the middle of it. If you try to get out of it, to escape from it, you always attach yourself more and more problematically to what you try to escape from. For example, we know in our work with psychic states induced by drugs that if some very terrifying thing comes up, it's fatal to run away from it. Always head right into it. Find out why you're afraid. Find out what in it bugs you. So in the same way with helping people who have pain, instead of running away, it's very educative. It's difficult, but it is very, very educative to accept pain and to try and experience it more and more and more and more deeply, so that you go, as it were, right down into it. So with the samsara, to go deeply into it is to find out that the samsara, that is to say, this ordinary everyday life in which you are involved, is really not different from nirvana, which means release. The word nirvana means to blow out, and that is to give a sigh of relief. If you try to hold your breath, you will lose it. And the breath, of course, is the life. But if you give your breath up and breathe out, you'll get a new breath back in. So nirvana means to cease to cling to oneself, to one's possessions, to one's status, to one's virtues, to one's vices. It makes no difference. So if you pile up virtues, if you become a very good person with the expectation of going to heaven, you are bound to the wheel with golden chains. If you become a very bad person and you sink down into the naraka domains, you are bound to the wheel with red-hot iron chains. But either way you are bound, and you will go round and round and round and round, always like a little mouse in one of those things where it's trying to climb to the top of the wheel and the wheel just goes round and round and the mouse stays in the same place. The Buddhists have a view of the universe which is based, of course, on ancient Hindu ideas, that the wheel is of vast proportions. There isn't only this solar system world. It's so striking how the Buddhists and the Hindus differed from medieval Christians, who thought that there was just this one little world and our planet was the center of it, and there were the various spheres outside. But they've always thought in terms of there being untold myriads of worlds, not only vast outwardly in space, going on and on and on forever, but also vast inwardly, so that in every speck of dust there are innumerable cosmoses full of beings of all kinds, full of gods and events and wars and even galaxies and things inside a grain of dust. In every direction, in every way, they see myriads of universes. And they go on forever and ever. And although we think of the rhythm of the universe we're in Hindu cosmology, as being based on the kalpa, it manifests for a period called a kalpa, 4,320,000 years, and then is withdrawn for an equivalent period and then manifests again. There are tiny kalpas governing the universes in a grain of dust, which come and go with, from our point of view, unbelievable rapidity. And then also, far beyond our conception, there are immense kalpas, where cosmos is unthinkable in dimensions come and go. And so always the question about this view of the universe is, are you hooked on it or aren't you? Are you doing it with delight, or is it a drag? Are you surviving, you see? Are you going on living every day because you feel bound to, or you're too afraid to die? Or are you living every day because you really will to? Now they see, you see, the universe as always playing a game with itself. Sometimes it knows what it is. That there is nothing to be afraid of at all. Nothing, nothing, nothing. That you are it. You are the indestructible shunyata. This word literally means voidness. But it doesn't mean voidness in the sense of nothing, of just negative. It means voidness in the sense of ultimate consciousness. You can't, you see, if you would consider, what would God, what sort of an impression of himself would he have? He obviously wouldn't look at his hands like we do and see he's an old man with a beard sitting on a throne. God as the kind of ultimate, than which there is no whicher, outside which there is nothing, which has no edges. He wouldn't therefore look like a ball, he wouldn't look like a cube, he wouldn't look like a body. There would be no way at all of conceiving the final self of all selves. So that's why it's represented as voidness, as total transparency, as a kind of ultimate space in which everything can happen. That's what there is. That's what we all are at root. Only it plays that it's not that. That it's all of our separate existences, and it goes in therefore, and it gets into trouble on purpose. But when you get into real trouble on purpose, and then you forget that you got there on purpose, and you can complain because you're in a trap, and then you want out, you see? So then there's a way out. But how exciting. This goes on endlessly because it's a game of now you see it, now you don't. Hide and seek. And that corresponds to the basic impulse of life, which, as we know it physically, is vibration. It's a wave system where there are crests of the waves and troughs. So if you take what we call sound, and you listen to sound carefully, sound is not sound. Sound is sound silence. It goes on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off. And where you say you hear the noise, that's the crest of the wave. Where you don't hear the noise, that's the trough. But you won't get any sound at all without both crest and trough. Pure sound doesn't exist. And so, according to the basic ideas that underlie Hinduism and Buddhism, all being is like that. It is coming and going. It is therefore not only life. Life is life-death. What we call reality is not merely a solid. It's solid space. Here it is, here it isn't. It vibrates. And the illusion that is involved in this is that it looks as if you could have the one without the other. It looks sometimes as if we could have nothing without something. That nothing would triumph, and that everything would disappear, and it wouldn't happen anymore. At other times, it looks as if the solid element were the only real one. That alone is there. So all beings, all sentient beings, as the Buddhists call them, constantly scare themselves that it might stop and that there would be nothing, In other words, that the dark side might win. So they play a game which is that the white side must win. They play it against the dark and have an extraordinary adventure doing just that. And you can get involved in this, and you can get anxious, and you can get all your hair raised, and just terrifying. But it's a joke, right down to its funny heart. And when you wake up and you find out that there never was anything in the dark side to be afraid of, nothing is left but to laugh. So that's what that's what Buddhism is about. It's a method. That's what the word dharma means. The method for bringing about a new state of consciousness in which you discover that the opposites go together. Therefore, Buddhism is a dialogue, or what we would call in the West a dialectic. Primarily a dialogue carried on between teacher and student, the Buddha and his original disciples, the descendants of those disciples and their disciples. Or the teacher in Buddhism may not actually be another individual human being. The teacher may be life itself. It might be anything. Could even be a book. But there's a dialogue goes on. And if you read the original Buddhist scriptures, there is a huge section of it simply called the Dialogues of the Buddha, because he always worked like Socrates in terms of a conversation. Now that has a very important meaning.